Welcome everybody to another off-season discussion here on the channel. And today we are going to be talking about the Seattle Kraken. I've got two very special guests joining me to talk about the Kraken, and that is Dylan and RJ from Emerald City Hockey. And it is awesome to have you guys on. First time having you guys on the channel, and I am super excited. Obviously, Seattle, newest team in the league, a team that's had some significant moves made this offseason. And I am personally very interested to see how they look next season. It's great to have you guys on. Thank you for taking the time to do this. And you ready to talk some Seattle hockey?
Oh, yeah, always.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Of course, guys. All right, guys, their channel will be linked down in the description of the video. So please check them out, show them some support. And getting ready to get into a new hockey season with the Kraken this year. Obviously, last year was their first season. They certainly looked like an expansion team in a lot of ways, did not quite have the success right off the bat that we saw Vegas have back in 2017. But they're a team that's made some significant changes and seems to be taking a little bit different of an approach, more of a build through the draft, build a good young core where they're not necessarily shooting for this immediate success, but trying to do it for more maybe long-term sustainable success. Whereas, you know, we're seeing all the issues in Vegas now with the salary cap from the approach that they've taken. Just before we get into specific moves that they made this offseason, do you agree with that? Is, you know, Seattle taking that more of kind of build a younger core approach? And do you think that that's maybe a better way to go about it for long-term success?
I think that they are kind of in the middle a little bit. I think some of the mistakes really going into the first season were the fact that they didn't kind of choose a side there. Yeah. If you're trying to build long-term through the draft, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to go out and sign a Jaden Schwartz or a Philip Grubauer or an Alex Wenberg. I think they were kind of trying to do a little bit of both. And with how the first season went, I think they adjusted a little bit, realized that maybe sustainable success is more what they're trying to go for. And given that they've drafted very well, I think that's going to help them long term. But using the trade deadline to really accumulate assets in these draft picks, that was huge for them. And I think that's going to serve them well going forward.
Yeah, exactly. They were kind of caught in that in-between ground. And what's funny is, in a lot of ways, the kind of longer term approach, the build through the draft, has yielded them these pieces that are probably going to be ready to help them now, right? Maddie Veneers came up for a handful of games at the end of last season, looked fantastic, is totally set to lead this team. You get Shane Wright in the draft this year, somebody who, you know, has the potential to step into your lineup this upcoming season. If not, then certainly the year after that, and can contribute, you know, fairly quickly for an NHL draft pick. So it's been kind of interesting how they've gone about all this stuff, but no matter how you look at it, the future is definitely bright for them, both short and long term.
Yeah, I want to talk about Shane Wright because that was something that probably wasn't expected going into the draft, for him to drop all the way down to 4. And, you know, you had Maddie Veneers, who was drafted, you know, a year ago, and he's, you know, made his NHL debut and is going to have his first full season coming up. And a player that I absolutely love. I watch a lot of college hockey, and I am huge fan of Veneers. And now you have Shane Wright kind of fall down to that 4th spot and land right there. This could be one of, you know, long term, one of the best 1-2 punches down the middle in the NHL. Looking at, you know, throughout the years, we've seen that teams have that 1 and 2 center. And now it looks like Seattle thinking ahead to maybe 3-4 years from now, where those guys really start getting into the primes of their careers and, you know, established NHL players. What a tandem down the middle there with Wright and Veneers.
Yeah, it's super exciting for all of us. Everybody in Kraken Nation has been super pumped about this, to get it and to have two great people too, right? Like they're not just great players, but they're also very hard workers. They love to play a 200-foot game. Defense is very much part of their games. I think that's going to be a huge factor for them, you know, in the future as they go on postseason runs, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, you know, Shane Wright fell to 4. Not a lot of people expecting that, but I do think it was kind of the perfect landing spot for him. looking at him as a prospect, I kind of viewed him as like, this is a guy who's probably going to be one of the best, if not the best, second line centers out there. And here he finds himself in his position where that's really what his role is going to be, right? Maddie Veneers is going to be the first line center for this team. It gives him that opportunity to take advantage of better matchups later on, be able to use his defense and all of those aspects of his game that really made him a more complete player than we're used to seeing for these potential first overall picks. And as you said, like, looking 3-4 years from now, I mean, it's all the stuff that all the great Stanley Cup winning teams have had. This is the foundation of it.
Yeah. And you can tell that the organization really knows what they have too. It's something that Ron Francis discussed when talking about the offseason plan, where, what do you do given the Kraken probably need another center? And then Shane Wright falls to you and he mentioned this might tweak things a little bit as far as how we approach it. Maybe you don't have to go out and get a Nazem Kadri and sign him to term or a deal like that. I think they really, they do understand what they have there as far as this 1-2 punch at center that you can build around for a decade.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of, kind of building, some major acquisitions as far as offense goes this offseason was the signing of Andre Burakovsky and then the trade for Oliver Bjorkstrand. And I actually did a video myself about these two particular pieces. And Seattle had a tough time scoring goals last season. They were 28th in the NHL in goals for. They only had 3 guys reach 20 goals, and McCann was the only one to go above 25. You knew that was kind of an area that they needed to make an impact in and improve. And then they go out and they get 2 guys who are coming off career best seasons last year, who are still, relatively young in the prime of their careers at this point in their later 20s, not 30 plus guys, which I think is a very smart move. And just the impact that adding guys like Burakovsky and Bjorkstrand into that offense can have immediately just this coming season has got to be pretty exciting for a team that certainly needs to score more goals.
For sure. And the age is key. I'm glad you brought that up because at 27, they're the kind of players that can make sense for now and the future. Try and bridge the gap between the current core and that future core of the recent draft picks that they've made. Goal scoring, absolutely a huge need for the Kraken. Anyone who watched them at all last season could kind of see it was a glaring need. And those 2 guys, Burakovsky, you see what he can do offensively. That's really his specialty there. And then Bjorkstrand, I love that trade too. I have to talk about it. They weaponized cap space finally. This is the kind of thing that I was hoping to see the Kraken do all the way back to last summer at the expansion draft. And this is the first trade they've really made that has weaponized cap space and taking a player where you get him for basically nothing. And he's a very good player. So I think that's the kind of move I would have liked to see them make more early on. But I think Ron Francis has kind of learned from that early approach, like we talked about kind of with your first question, and has started to make the right moves.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, not only are they going to both bring in offense, these are guys that can both be 20 goal scorers. Bjorkstrand trending towards 30 with 28 last year. I actually think he might be more of the surprise and maybe potentially the bigger addition to this team, especially on the power play, because that's really where that lack of goal scoring showed for the Kraken. Their power play was abysmal all season long. It was borderline unwatchable at times. Like it was very, very bad. And I'm really excited to see what both of these players can bring to that, but especially a player like Bjorkstrand who can play in the high slot, kind of play that bumper role. He can play net front. He has a good shot. He can get behind defenses, all that kind of stuff. Because I think that's a lot of the things that the Kraken were missing last year. It was certainly on the power play and at other times offensively as well. It was very formulaic, very predictable. Defenses didn't have to work too hard to kind of stymie them. And I'm hoping that the addition of these better players, these players that have, been in more, high profile offenses can bring some of that with them.
Yeah, for sure. I'm personally a very big fan of Oliver Bjorkstrand. I think he kind of went under the radar because he was in Columbus, and obviously, Columbus isn't a team that draws a lot of attention or fanfare. He's a guy I legitimately think can very well have 30 plus goals, especially given the role that he's probably going to have on this team, where he's going to have to be a primary goal scorer. I think both of those guys being added in are going to have a significant impact on the offense and make this team significantly better offensively this coming year. And obviously that's something that the Kraken definitely needed after last season. Another thing I think they need is certainly better play at the goaltender position. Philip Grubauer was, I mean, for the contract that he signed, was not nearly good enough. Some of that was certainly the team in front of him. Some of that could have been, just the change of going to a new team, a new city. We see goaltenders, especially goaltenders, struggle with that sometimes early on when they go to a new team. Grubauer's still got, significant term left on this contract. There, you've got to be hoping for and expecting a step back in the right direction for him this coming season, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly going to be key if the Kraken want to compete for a playoff spot, as they've kind of said they want to. Goaltending is going to have to be better than it was last season. I mean, bottom line is that everybody knows Grubauer did not perform, as well as everybody would have wanted him to, as well as he wanted to. Any of those things, you can look at it. This is the first time he ever went over 40 games. Did that have, something to do with it? And, is he going to be put in that position again now with Chris Drieger being out with the torn ACL? Maybe. How is he going to handle that larger workload again? Those are some questions. He did get better over the course of the season. Second half of the season was not nearly as bad. Much more around average for an NHL starter. So, I feel like if you can get that through a full season for the Kraken, given the additions they've made offensively and stuff, I think we'll see a very different result for the team.
Yeah, you're definitely hoping for some positive regression there. And we know that Grubauer is not as bad as he showed last season. I mean, a career body of work shows us that that's the case. And I think the transition was tough for him. And we've seen that with goalies, and especially for a guy like Grubauer too, someone who the mental side of the game is so important for him. He's very smart. He thinks the game very well. Communication with his defense is very important with him. And so there's kind of a transition there. And I think the other big factor too is you got a new goalie coach this season too. Andrew Allen, the goalie coach last year, was let go. Steve Briere coming in, and I know the two of them got to work right away. Grubauer kind of came back from vacation early. We saw him around at the Kraken's dev camp, and he wasn't on the ice there with the rookies, but he was there working with the goalie coach Steve Briere already. So hopefully that's able to help him going forward.
Yeah, for sure. He's certainly one of those guys that I'm looking to have a bounce back season this coming year. And he's a very capable goaltender and has proven it. He's played well in Washington. He's played well in Colorado. I think it's time that we see him play well in Seattle as well. Just one last question for you guys. Just overall, I certainly see Seattle as a much improved team with the moves that they've made this offseason, and think that they can certainly have themselves competitive in the mix in that Pacific Division up in this coming season. Just overall, how do you guys feel about the off season, and do you where do you see this team heading into this coming 2022-23 year?
Overall, I'm pleased with the offseason. One thing I wanted to see from Ron Francis was kind of showing restraint on some of the big free agents, whether that's, not signing Klingberg to maybe a 7-year term or like a Nazem Kadri. I think he showed some restraint there. He let the deals come to him, which is what I wanted to see. And also, he added some pieces that are going to make them a better team right away. It's kind of clear what direction he wants to go. He said at the start of the offseason, our goal is to make the playoffs next year. And now I can kind of start to see really, how he's building to that. So overall, pleased with the offseason, and especially long-term, things are looking good. As for expectations next season, I think the hope is you compete for a wild card spot. It's going to be tough in the Pacific Division. Vegas is going to bounce back. Edmonton's going to be in there. LA is going to get better. It's going to be really hard to get in one of those 3 Pacific spots, but given the roster they have, I think they can compete for a wild card spot and at least just be in the race for longer, because that's what just killed them last season, is being realistically out of playoff contention by Thanksgiving. And that's just what cannot happen again.
Exactly. And I think that's really all Kraken fans are looking for this season. Would we love to, really be in the thick of things through March and April, all that kind of stuff? Of course we would. But realistically, we understand where we're coming from. And I think a lot of this is just going to come down to Maddie Veneers. We all just want to see what a full season of Maddie Veneers looks like. He's had his feet wet in the NHL already a little bit, so he's not going to be coming in completely cold. And what is that going to look like? What is it going to look like with this team, having him at the helm, leading that first line and doing all the stuff that we know he is capable of doing. And, just how quickly is he going to potentially show that star potential and take everybody with him? In addition to just seeing overall how the offense improves with the additions that we talked about, all that kind of stuff, and just having a year together, right? This was a group of players that was thrown together after that expansion draft and right into a preseason with like a week in between, basically, as far as meeting each other, getting to know each other, practicing on the ice together because of how COVID handled all the training camp and all that stuff last season. So, there was a lot of stuff that wasn't really figured out last year that now having a full off season, having everybody largely together, they've played together now, you've got a season worth of chemistry, just seeing how all that stuff comes together. I'm just super excited for it.
All right. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming on. It was great to get a chance to talk to you and learn a lot about Seattle and the Kraken and where they're at. So really appreciate you guys taking the time. If there's anything you'd like to plug or say, the floor is yours. And thank you guys again.
Yeah, I guess first and foremost is our Twitter account. It's at Emerald City Hockey, at Emerald City HKY. You can find all the Kraken breaking news and our thoughts there. We have a weekly podcast called The Deep Dive that's available anywhere you find podcasts or on YouTube. That's a lot of fun. Community Discord where everyone can come hang out, talk Kraken, talk hockey, hang out in general with other fans. And the biggest thing we really do is our post-game lives on YouTube. After every Kraken game, literally just minutes after every game ends, we are live on YouTube to break down the game, talk about it with all the fans, pick each other up after losses, celebrate wins together, and it's a ton of fun.
That's
so
awesome.
thanks for having us on. I just want to get in a word. Thanks for plugging everything, Dylan, and really appreciated coming on. It's a really cool show.
Awesome. All right, guys. Thank you. And thank you to everybody for watching. Emerald City Hockey, link in the description. Please show them some support and give them a sub. Check out their channel. We were talking Seattle here. I got some more of these coming up for a bunch of different teams around the NHL. Thank you guys again. Hope you're enjoying this series this off season. And I'll be talking to you all very, very soon. Have a good night.